Alrighty. Oh, jeez. Let's try to keep this up vibe and interesting for the next 20 minutes. I'll certainly do my best. Let's talk about leadership. That's me. That's that. And here are the inclusions and exclusions in this presentation over the next 20 minutes. What's not included? The pros and cons of flexible work policies, including work from home. Not interested. Harvey Norman, nil interest. Next, not included. Different types of flexible work policies. Not for today, not for this session. Not included. Any cheap shots, of course. What is included is why is strong leadership even more difficult now? Employee engagement theory and related theories. I'm just going to skim through that, otherwise your eyes will glaze over. And then number 3 there, I'm going to give 4 of my own personal practical takeaways for improving leadership and engagement immediately. Not in 3 months, not in 6 months, tomorrow. Let's talk about leadership. Why is it so difficult? So if you really wanted to go down the rabbit hole and learn more about leadership, it's pretty easy to do, superficially, because there is currently 57,000 books on leadership listed on Amazon. And they're all in different categories, and you can go nuts, go bananas, do whatever you want, you go down different rabbit holes, etc. I certainly did that for a couple of years. And despite all of that, one of the things that I realised after a bunch of years was the further I got into it, the further down the rabbit hole I went, the more I realised how little I knew. And that actually had a paradoxical effect of increasing my levels of fear and insecurity and increasing my levels of anxiety. And then I kind of found myself shrinking back into myself. And then after a few months, having the courage to come back out and say, right, let's have another crack at it and see how we go. One thing is a general consensus these days, and that is that leadership is... leaders are made and not born. And whenever I say that, the first example that people always, not all people, but many people always say is, but what about Napoleon? He was a young dude and he was such an effective leader. Well, he was until the day that he wasn't. But there's a couple of other things about Napoleon that we need to bear in mind really quickly. One is his parents had really, really high expectations of him, number one. Right, so straight off the bat, expectations really high. Secondly, he was a smurf. Thirdly, he didn't speak French and he didn't speak Italian. So when he went to French military school, all the other kids, teenagers, picked on him because of his weird accent. So for his whole career, he was shadow boxing against himself, probably against his parents as well. He had a big point to prove. And so that drive, along with the fact that his parents sent him to military school at the age of 9. I've got a son who's 12 who can't even unstack the dishwasher. Right? This kid was 9 and he got sent to military school and he went on to be a success. So, point number 1, leadership is a journey and it requires ongoing development. If you don't use it, you lose it, as they say. So where does it all start? It starts not with a Bachelor of Leadership from whatever university you can think of, because I'm telling you right now, there isn't one. Right, what we do is we progress along our functional path. Marketing, regulatory affairs, sales, you name it. And then we get to a point where we achieve functional success. And then someone says, you know what, you're damn good at what you do. Why don't we turn you into a leader? And we'll give you 5 or 4 or 35 people underneath you and you can lead that team, because surely functional success just leads into leadership of that function that you know everything about, right? Wrong. Okay, so when we start that journey, some people then move across and upwards, I should say, for various reasons. A lot of us languish for years in this cycle here of perhaps getting promoted to a leadership role too early, perhaps having or not enough training to prepare us for that. And so we're kind of in the deep end. And then the responses or our behaviours are normal human behaviours or expressions of fear and insecurity, which is micromanagement, a need to be liked, emotional-driven behaviour, and ego-driven behaviour. And once you see this in other people, and once you kind of understand this, you can't unsee it. And that is a leader who gets so uncomfortable with the fear and insecurity that reverts back to the functional side. I've done it 1,000 times myself. I actually literally remember a time about 10 years ago, in 2016, where I was at someone's desk and I was saying, in your forecast model, can you link that to that? No, that to that? No, that to that? No, just stand up, step aside. I'll just do it myself. So I did it myself. And as I'm doing it myself, I'm literally thinking to myself, am I David Brent? Have I turned into David Brent from The Office? I think I may have. And I could see by the look of the guy's face, he was like, I can't believe you just did that. Still to this day, I can't believe I did that. But I reverted, because of my frustration and fear and insecurity, to just doing. I'll do it myself. Okay, so this is an ongoing concern for the leader, but also for the company too. So let's talk a little bit more about that leadership journey and why things get more and more difficult. Only in a couple of ways. There are other ways. So we begin our journey as leaders and we get taught about the many different leadership styles that there are, some of which are included here. And these days we've got empowering leadership styles, shared, enterprise, inspirational. There's 6 of those, by the way, 6 enterprise styles. And we're taught to be now authentic. And for the 1% of us in the room, which is about 2 of us, charismatic. The rest of us don't try. If you're a dork, stay a dork. It's okay. Isn't it funny these days? Well, I think it's kind of funny when I'm interviewing candidates, I ask, can you please describe your leadership style? Yeah, sure, I can do that. I'm a transformational leader with a rising transactional leadership style, and I'm working on being charismatic. How's that going for you? Crickets. Anyway, so it's getting more and more difficult. So how can we make things more difficult for for our leaders? I've got a good idea. Why don't we change to the matrix structure? Why would we do that? Well, because the matrix structure is for enhanced collaboration through multiple reporting lines. Oh, okay. Right. So doesn't the whole concept of the matrix structure kind of fundamentally revolve around all the components of the matrix structure working? Otherwise the whole thing collapses? Yeah, it does. So how am I supposed to control? Well, you can't. That's why it's an impossible mission. Okay, so what would I call this new leadership style that you want me to perfect? Would you call it the matrix structure or leadership style? No, that's too simple. Oh, would you call it influencing without authority leadership style? No, that's too simple as well. What would you call it? Call it all of that. Just be all of those, and then you can master this with decreasing resources, more distractions, more functional doing, and then, of course, which style should I be choosing out of all of these? So things are becoming, over the last 10 years, more and more complex and more difficult for the leaders. So if we think back to the question on my first slide, leadership, leaders exposed. Yeah, I do believe that leaders have been exposed, more so in the last few years because of what's on the far right over there. But it's not necessarily their fault. It's because, in my opinion, things have become more and more difficult, and there's nowhere to run and there's nowhere to hide for leaders. And so in that respect, I think leaders have become more exposed. So let's make things more difficult. Let's have a COVID experience. Let's everyone work from home for a couple of years. Let's come back and let's try to come to some type of new normal. Well, there isn't really a new normal, is there? And so for people who are old enough like me, and I've heard people in the office say this, yeah, but back in the olden days before COVID, we used to all be in the office 5 days a week, and you could easily say, "Hey Jimmy, where's the Penske file?" and "Hey, where's this?" and let's bring the teams together for a quick meeting in the whatever room. And we can't do that these days. So we've lost some of that contact. And I would also kind of say, just like these days we say, you might hear someone say, 20 years ago we used to send faxes. Well, we don't anymore. It's the end of the story. Well, 5 years ago, we all used to be in the office 5 days a week. Well, it's just not the case anymore. So there's no point in banging on about it, what used to be in the old days. Times have changed. Now, remember I said I'm not going to make any comments about whether 3 days is better than 4, or 4 is better than 5, which is better than 0. Or 1. It's not for this discussion. So we have flexible or hybrid models. We have team dispersion. With the matrix model, regionally, globally, as well as locally, with our teams that perhaps used to be sitting in desks around us, who perhaps these days may only be sitting in desks around us, if at all, 3 or 4 days a week. And also changed attitudes. These days, people have had the experience of working from home and knowing that they can do it. When I say working from home, I mean general flexible working conditions. And they know that they can do it for a period of time. They know that they can be productive. They know that the sky's not going to collapse because they've already done it. And so attitudes have changed as well. And so there is now a legitimately higher importance placed on being able to pick up the kids from school three days a week, or have dinner with my kids, or drop them off once or twice a week, or do whatever I need to do, flexible stuff, right? These days, I mean, who would have thought that we get to the point where, as a leader, we would say, hey guys, so we're all going to be in the office for our meeting on Thursday to discuss the strategy for X, Y, Z, and for someone to say, actually, I'm working from home, sorry. What? Can you imagine that 5 years ago? Whereas now it's common. We have to work with that, and that's okay, it's cool. But it makes things more difficult. Let's progress. So, in matrix organisations and with team dispersion, we have all of these daily distractions. We've got, for many of us in the room here, meetings with global or regional, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Then you've got to get up at 6:30, get the kids to school, or at least allow your kids to survive in some way, and then get yourself to the office, so that you can be there for your 8:30 meeting somehow. And what impact does all of that have on the team? Well, that kind of picture says it all. So this is from Hunton Executive. This was published 2 months ago, a month or two ago. On the left there, according to leaders in our industry here in Australia, the top priorities for the next year to two, employee wellbeing and management and engagement initiatives is way down 2%. But there is a recognised need for prioritising strong leadership capabilities and decision making. So I did a scan of industry press and the report that was on the previous sliders, whatever I could get my hands on. Unfortunately, Arthur, I did not use ChatGPT. I probably should have, because that could have saved me about 95 minutes. But you can see some of the key words that came out here: distractions and commitments and gossip, power and politics, absenteeism, burnout. You can read the rest, right? Now, of course, I should say that there were many keywords that were more positive than these, and there were articles about great places to work and strong leadership, but that's not a part of this presentation. Okay, so that's part one out of the way. Let's breeze really quickly through relevant engagement theory, which is something that interests me. So as far as engagement theory goes, we all would be aware that there's a positive relationship between employee engagement and productivity, right? That's been established for about 40 or 50 years. But there are some other things going on here that make things a little bit more difficult with flexible working conditions, which I explored, like attachment theory, like group dynamics theory, different leadership styles theory, and leader communication theory. Just looking at some keywords here for engagement theory, you can see in the pink there, psychological meaningfulness, safety and availability, kind of put in brackets to summarise all of that: psychological safety. That's fundamental engagement theory, which goes back however long that is, to 33 years or something. Some other keywords there: workload, control, reward, community, fairness, values. Similar types of words, if not identical to what I showed you two slides ago, right? Social exchange theory is an important one as it relates to our current situation, because there is the whole idea of a social exchange structure is that I give you as an employee my engagement, and there's things that you give to me: benefits, pay. That's what it used to be. But now it's more than that. It's not just benefits and pay, it's the flexibility that I enjoyed over the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever years. So that whole exchange there has become more complex, and therefore it's more difficult for leaders to manage. Attachment theory: if you've got physical or geographical separation between a leader and the followers or the members of the team, that causes anxiety. Group dynamics theory: if you've got let's say a leadership team or any team, and you have an external or an internal influence on that team, that can cause increases in anxiety, and that can be expressed in 4 different ways: pairing, dependence, fight and flight. I'll talk about that in a few slides' time. Leadership styles theory. You've already, on that previous slide, seen so many different types of leadership styles. Which one do you want to pick? Which one do you identify with? It's kind of a bit like horoscopes these days. And then leader communication theory. The extent to which leaders communicate and the frequency in which they communicate, multiplied by, or a function of quality of communications as well. So what happens if you've got a leader that communicates frequently, but the quality of the communication's poor? Well, then that makes it worse. And the reverse is true as well. Okay, in the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to progress to part 3. Bearing all of that in mind, well, you don't have to, but for me, bearing all of that in mind, what are 4 leadership skills that I can recommend to make an immediate impact, as I said, not in 3 or 6 months, but tomorrow? And this is based on my experiences and my research, and I do these 4 things. So I learned some lessons about 20 years ago from doing some work with some Australian fighter pilots. Back then, their cockpits looked a little bit more like that, because 25 years ago, they were flying F-111s and first-generation Hornets, not the fancy stuff that they fly today. And so their cockpits looked like this. So one of the key lessons that I learned 20 years ago, and I still do it every day with my teams, is to provide ruthless focus for the team and remove as many distractions as possible. So you can see with all of these distractions here that this pilot has in the cockpit, he or she should be focusing primarily on what's happening out there in the sky so that they don't fly into a pole or something like that, right? Rather than looking at whatever the hell that is, and whatever that is, and whatever that is, like they should be focusing on out there. So what these guys do, and they have to do it because if they have a bad day, it means they may not make it home for dinner that night. So for them, it's a priority, it's key for flawless execution, and it has to be done with the team. So what they do is they just pick 4 things, 1, 2, 3, 4 dials or gauges, whatever you want to call them, and they, every couple of minutes, drop their eyes down, do a quick scan of the 4 gauges. They're not actually looking at each gauge, they're doing a scan, knowing that they've seen it so many times. If there's an anomaly, it'll stick out straight away, so they don't actually have to read each one. Do a quick scan, then look up for 5 minutes and do what they've got to do, and then after the 5 minutes, look down, quick scan. Now, taking that and bringing it into practice for us, how do we do that? Well, providing ruthless focus to the team. That means snapping off requests that come for global for some fancy new shiny thing and saying, sorry, we can't do that right now. We've got our brand plans and our plans for this year, and we're focusing on those. Your shiny thing, you can send me your information and I'll have a look at that, and let's have some discussions about that in preparation for next year, but it's not part of the plans now, and I'm not distracting my team. Really? Yeah, really. And as far as interactions with my teams go, I really love sitting down and having discussions with them where I say, let's talk about the 7 or 8 things, or however many things, put them up on the screen that you're currently working on, that you're bamboozled by and you're so overwhelmed by. And let's have a session on removing distractions. Number 5, cut it off. I'll deal with that. Number 3, cut it off. If anyone gives you grief, send it to me. I'll work with that. Numbers 1 and 2, snap them off as well. So what are you left with? I'm left with 2 things. And I can literally see the look in their eyebrows go up, their eyes go white like that, and they literally say, are you actually giving me permission to cut off all those things and just focus on 2 things? Yep, that's exactly what I'm doing. And you can see the look on their face and the relief, and their shoulders go back and off they go to do what they have to do, right? Number 2 is understanding group dynamics. So I made reference to this before. We're going to run out of time pretty soon, so you can Google Wilfred Bion, 1961, who was a psychoanalyst back then. He's dead now. So he invented all of this and came up with, in relation to an increase in anxiety in any team, family, sports team, your mates, or your work team, some different anxiety responses. Forget the bottom 2, but the top one's pretty self-explanatory, fight and flight. So you may have, compared to a team member's baseline, they may be calm and positive. All of a sudden, they're demonstrative or argumentative refusing to do X or Y, this isn't going to work, it's not going to work, blah, 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 compared to a baseline of not that. Rather than looking at that superficially, we should look at that and try to work out what's actually happening underneath, what the subconscious cues are underneath and what is driving that anxiety, and then address the causes of that anxiety. And once we do that, you can literally see the anxiety just dissipate. And their anxiety levels go from 7 or 8 out of 10 down to 6, down to 5, back down to a baseline of 3 or 4. Which is what I just explained. Leadership styles, I did a lot of research into this, but my recommendations are really over here. It's pretty simple, just pick one. Now, all the research shows that transformational leadership is more effective on team engagement by the leader than transactional leadership styles. Okay, and both of those are more effective than a laissez-faire leadership style, which actually has a negative effect. Laissez-faire is character or defined by pretty much doing nothing and just being autocratic. Here are the rules, I made them up, go and do it, see you in 6 months. That's laissez-faire. Don't do that. Don't try to be something that you're not. If you're not charismatic, and most of us in this room are not, including me, don't try it. If you're a psychopath, a sociopath, or a narcissist, please don't be authentic. Because you're a black hole and you can keep your black hole to yourself. By the way, about narcissistic personality traits, not disorders, but traits, are overexpressed in leaders, 10 to 20%. So pretty much this whole narcissists. Always show humility. Let's always be humble. And if you don't know which style to go for, just pick transformational and you can't go wrong. And then further down the track, you can try to have a rising star of whatever else you want. Okay? And then finally, communicating like a leader. So setting clear expectations and guardrails and boundaries on what the flexible work conditions actually mean for you and for everyone in the team. And use as many examples as you can. So 3.1 there, the matrix structure. So what if someone in the team has a meeting at 3 o'clock in the morning from 3 till 4? What happens the next morning? Do I expect you to be at your desk at 7:30, 8:30, whatever? What happens then? Let's talk about it and let's be clear on what that means for the team. What about set days that the team all agree to be in the office? And what about individual circumstances? What about the person who wants to pick up their kids 4 days a week from school at 4:30, 5 o'clock, whatever? As opposed to the person who's got no kids and doesn't give a rat's about any of that. Okay, so what about different individual circumstances? Well, perhaps there is a need to have different circumstances for different members of the team, but the most important thing is, if you choose to do that, communicate it to the whole team so that everyone knows that's happening with that person, here's what happens with me, and I know that this is what happens with that person, and as a team, we're across that. Then there's no need for gossip. By the way, the canary there is the canary in the coal mine. That's an important thing to remember, and one of my greatest lessons is gossip. The canary in the coal mine in any team is gossip. So when I start to see an increase, there's always baseline gossip, 2 out of 10, right, 3 out of 10. When I start to hear or get a sense of gossip, 3.5, 4, 4.5 out of 10, then my senses are telling me that I need to pay a bit more attention to what's going on and work out what the cause of the gossip is. Is it people talking about a restructure that's actually not happening, that no one's ever even talked about? What is it? And I need to work out what it is and address it and put it to bed. And as soon as we are clear about providing that information with as much transparency as we can, then you can literally see the anxiety just go 7 out of 10, 6, 5, 4, 3, down to a baseline. And the gossip goes down as well. So gossip is the canary in the coal mine. And I think that's just a summary. You can read that for yourself of the 4 points that I just made, or recommendations for quick results in terms of leadership skill development. But those quick results are also going to have an immediate impact or effect on the team in terms of engagement, and then by default on productivity. You can take that to the bank. Thanks, and sorry for going over by a few minutes.